Well, a minute gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning. Good morning to you, to the listeners of Classic 105.5 and 105.9 on the FM band. Especially good morning to all our viewers just joining us on television. That's GBN, Channel 7, Channel 11, and Channel 20 if you are in cable. And a wonderful good morning to those of you that's on the various social media platforms, be it YouTube, Facebook, or you chiming in via the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd. Welcome to The Point for today, the 20th day of the month of April. And indeed, we say thanks for being part of today's conversation. My guest this morning, representative from the RGPF, the Royal Grenadier Police Force, is Sergeant Campbell. And this morning, we'll be speaking about the RGPF's recruitment process. As you can well appreciate, in any civilized society, there's law and order, and that's where the role of the police is not just about trying to get you in line, but the different processes that they go through to ensure, Sergeant Campbell, that we have the right men and women in uniform to ensure our safety. And you'll probably think maybe very often persons maybe not consider the recruitment process. What does the process entails? And so this morning we are going to talk about that. So again, thank you, good morning, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, JC. It's a privilege to be here, and good morning to all listeners across all platforms. My name, as was said before, Sergeant Campbell. I am presently attached to the police training school and sitting in the chair as the chief instructor.
Chief instructor at the training school. When I hear that, I personally, when I hear the training school, I go back, and I'm not sure, maybe because I'm probably, you're all growing up now, but you always remember the days of hearing the recruits, well, the symbolic, the khaki pants, that symbolic khaki pants. But even more so, you hear them in the early hours of the morning on the street. And you're like, oh, yeah, the recruits. These are the men and women that's going to be keeping us safe. But let's talk about the recruitment process, how it has evolved, and what it entails for the RGPF.
Great. So the recruitment process starts by the administration looking within the organization to see when is the best time for training. And the ACP responsible for training, after you would have consultation with the Commissioner of Police, will determine when there will be a recruitment campaign, and how many recruits will be appointed. Yeah, so after that discussion, he will continue to touch base or contact the commandant of the police training school, all right, and inform him. But the vacancies that is available within the organization must be well thought of. It must be considered carefully so that discussion can be made. So if you look at the police organization, we notice that recruitment is totally different to every public sector within the country and also private sectors.
Right. Because
the police organization cannot individually hire a policeman and train him for 6 months. It's not profitable. So that is why the organization must, and the administration must be careful as to how they look at the vacancies and see when the sufficient times arrive for that training to begin. And what we recognize is that annually should be that process of training. However, if within the year the amount of persons required to train did not occur, then it can be pushed back to the following year.
Right.
And here we have the police training school and the administration, the Assistant Commissioner of Police, will be informing the public that there is time. So there is a publication that will come out. There is time, and what we are looking at is, let's say, around 60 persons, or we are looking at 40 persons. What happens with the administration, the Assistant Commissioner will determine, okay, for this year we're going to have about 40 persons retiring, or we're going to have another 10 resigning for whatever reason, somebody must have resigned, or we have a dismissal, or somebody transfer. They also have to consider the attrition rate within the time of training.
Right.
And the attrition rate has to do with persons leaving the organization while training is going on. And that's how the total package comes about.
Okay.
To determine how much persons is required for training.
But in terms of in terms of the operations of the RGPF, is there an optimum number of police officers that the organization determines that is needed at any given period in time that is adequate enough? How do you come up with that? Is it based on what's the criteria?
The administration looks at the population of the island, and to one police officer, you may say we want to have 1,000 person that he can. So sometimes it's challenging, or to one police officer 100. So what happens is that the administration looks at the staffing and try to equate that numbers almost all on as close as possible every year, so that the numbers can be maintained.
But looking at where we are and we've seen the progression, the growth of the population, are we satisfied? I mean, I'm probably knowing the answer for it off my head. But how much of a concern is it for you? Because very often you hear the query of the stretched resources of the RGPF and the demands for your services, even outside of the traditional role.
Right, and you see, where I am at my level, I am not privy to what the administration is discussing, but yes, we can see how stretched that we are, and so administration, I am certain, is looking into that, and that is why we are here in consultation with you and in our publication with you for the recruitment process.
So that administration makes the determination, we need to get some more boys and girls, some more persons on force. There's a vacancy, the publication, then there's the application process, which of course it goes in tandem with the entry qualification.
Right. So in terms of the application, we encourage persons that are interested to apply, right? Once they feel suitable and qualified for and desiring to be a police officer, they can apply, and they can do so by sending the application to the Commissioner of Police. They can do so by sending it to the police training school or to police headquarters for George St. George's. Right? According to the policy of the application, persons applying is required to be of Grenadian nationality. And anything that might be different to that in relation to by maybe Grenadian by descent or something, we can afford to accept, but anything different we actually need to inform the Commissioner of Police.
Right.
Persons must pass a medical examination and must undergo a screening test before they be accepted. So those are some of the areas that we look at in terms of the application of the applicant.
So let's hold there. A medical screening. Take me through both processes. How detailed is this medical process?
Okay. So in terms of the medical and the screening process, it is what we call an entry qualification, and then you find that these entry qualification assist in the terms of health and physical structure of the individual, to see whether or not they can undergo the strenuous task that is ahead of them as a policeman. Yeah, and the screening process has to do with examination on arrival at the centers. So what happens there? We have a dictation, we have a mathematics, we have English, and we have general knowledge. The dictation, always the first thing that we do. It eliminates the process of having so much persons to attempt the examination.
Okay.
And the dictation is you read out the paragraph or two, and we accept certain amount of mistakes or errors. So if you should make nothing more than 10 errors, then that should be what it is.
And what qualifies as an error? Error in terms of
spelling.
Okay.
Sometimes we can add the grammars and so with it.
Right.
But it depends. So we look at the spelling, which is one of the main things, and we ensure that these things are corrected before an examination is attempted.
Why the spelling, though? Why is it important that we get, of all things, we get the spelling correct?
If you notice, police work involves a lot of writing, yes, and we are also part of the judicial system, and we have to be in the courts, we have to have our documents, we are part of the court settings, and therefore whatever we do must be done professionally.
So it's all in the concept of getting accuracy.
Yes.
And then I'm assuming you could well appreciate and understand the implications of that in the court.
Of course.
If it is brown, you have to put brown. Because, I mean, you could always go and say, well, Your Honor, the officer said I was at Beauchamp, and you hear these interesting stories that comes up. I mean, most times it's probably it's done for the wrong reasons, though. But it's important that you get placement, timing, get those details right. But going back to so all of that happens before they actually say to you, you can join training school.
Of course.
That happened before.
Yes, and a number of other things could happen to, or has to happen. We have in terms of entry qualification, we're looking at the age of persons, we're looking at height of persons, built also, and we're also looking at the educational standards. So. The height in relation to a male person attempting the police force. Male persons should, according to the regulation, it speaks about having a height of 5 feet 8 inches. And the female at a height of 5 feet 4 inches. There is something in the law that we don't really do much of, but it is there. It is relating to the chest of an individual. Yeah, the male persons, most cases. When you inhale and you exhale, there is a difference in height, the rise and fall of the chest. So if you take a measurement right around the body, when a male person, according to the law, and the law speaks about inhalation and exhalation, when somebody inhales, there is a rise with the chest, and the inches there should be at least 35 inches.
What's the significance, though?
Well, you don't want a police officer within the organization so tiny in size to be out there to deal with certain aggressions and so. Police are not to be looked as an intimidating person, but yet still you should have that kind of presence that will show when someone sees you, they could, recognize and respect you and so.
Right.
But we don't too much do those things. But that is in the law, and if it was to be dealt with, then it is an accurate decision.
But I'm assuming, though, because we know over time the RGPF has made a lot of strides in getting persons to reassess how they view the RGPF. Because most people traditionally, you think police is just here to punction you when you do something wrong. And I'm assuming as part of that ever-changing culture, it's about building relationship, camaraderie, and those different dynamics, more than say, oh, I see the police, I'm scared.
Right. And that's why we don't too look into that size and in detail with police officers.
Right.
And also with what in keeping with the goals of the Commissioner of Police, he would have, interestingly enough, he would have brought into the RGPF community-oriented style policing.
Correct.
Which is what is being taught most places, and even at our training level, it is part of the syllabus so that we can implant it into the minds of our young officers.
Quite interested. 15 minutes gone past the hour, and in case you're just joining us, welcome to the program, To The Point for today, the 28th day of April. My guest this morning from the RGPF recruitment. We're talking this morning the recruitment process, Sergeant Campbell. So, Sergeant, we go through that initial process. You do the exams, and you are accepted, and you are accepted. What happens thereafter?
Right. And
well, let me ask you before we get to the thereafter: are there any exceptions to that rule in terms of me wanting to become a police officer? Are there cases where maybe in specialized areas, because we know the RGPF and its portfolio of offering goes beyond now just traffic. There's IT and there's so are there cases when you decide you need a specialized somebody in a specialized field, and you go and you get them, or is it that everybody must go through that initial process and then?
Right. So yes, everyone has to train. One of the things I remembered in the past, we had cadet officers, which we haven't had in a very long time, that actually came into the organization and automatically went straight up to a cadet rank, which is between the rank of a sergeant and an inspector. Mm-hmm. But they still had to train. Right. Yes. So yes, we need the special persons within the RGPF, but they do have to undergo this training.
Even in administration?
Anything different? Well, in terms of administration, that is different. But anything different, it must come from a higher authority, Commissioner of Police versus Wales, and they will have that decision made.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we know we've done the entry test, all of that. Mm-hmm. You said to me, JC, you're ready to get into you have been accepted into the Royal Grenadier Police Force.
Right.
What happens thereafter?
So the job continues for the RGPF, because it means you would have accomplished and passed the exams, and now we are ready for the next fold, which is interviews, and the Assistant Commissioner of Police, who is in charge of training, he will determine the number of applicants to be interviewed from the successful candidates. And after training school would have done all of the correcting of the papers, mm-hmm. and they would send all of the applicants that completed successfully to the ACP, and he will determine the number of persons to be interviewed. In that case, even if we required at least 60 persons, the interview persons for candidate will be more. Mm-hmm. All right. So when this is done, arrangements will be made for security checks for these candidates to avoid any inconveniences. So the RGPF is responsible and is the agency that do all of the investigations of these applicants, and it is on completion of this application, it is sent to the interviewing board, where they will review it even during the process of the interview. Mm-hmm. Yep. And during the interview, the candidates will be judged on maturity. We spoke a little of that earlier. Mm-hmm. And they will be judged on their personal skill, their personality. They will be judged on interpersonal skills and their physical ability, intellectual ability, and whether or not they have the potential to becoming an efficient police officer. Yes, so, and these candidates, after the completion of it, the persons or the candidates that were successful will be sent forward to the Commissioner of Police for approval.
Right. Mm-hmm. And all of that happens even before you get to the training school?
Yes, all of that happens before.
So this is a quite detailed process that is involved here.
It's a very detailed process, and it's long. And so that's why at times, sometimes persons apply, and while going through the process, they're like calling, when, because they can't imagine that it's taking so long. But to actually have a complete detail of the historical background of someone, right, it can take a while, and there may be things that we need to clear up based on what we find, So sometimes you get information, but the information may not be, something that is so worthy of somebody becoming a police officer. But still, we have to try to look at it and see whether or not it is not something that is a victimization or some form of, injustice. So we have to be detailed at what we do.
And that process on an average takes how long? From the time the person has indicated interest That takes an average of how long?
Well, now we are in the process of receiving applications. It is possible by July. It is also possible by September we could have training.
Okay. So we've gone through all of that. The examination, it gets forwarded. I'm sorry, to the commissioner of police. He approves. He says yea, nay. Then what?
Right. So now training school is given the mandate to call these persons for a date to start training.
Right.
And we don't only just call them for a date, but we let them know that they were chosen to be a part of this prestigious organization. And now we are expecting them to work with certain things that will require them to continue training or to start training. And you could imagine some of the excitement from these candidates when they get that call.
Excitement, apprehension,
oh, yeah.
A mix of emotion.
Well, it's a mix of emotion too, yes. And upon arrival, they're looking around because they wonder, what it is, what next, and still some of them are asking, I wonder if I made the right decision, but I wonder if I could go through that 6 months. So it's a challenge, but it worked out well, and in most cases, we do have nearly all persons completing the training.
The training itself, is it a standardized protocol that is followed?
Right. So the training is always a standardized procedure, and it's a training where we have heavy interest in physical and theoretical work as it relates to the regulation and the laws.
Right. Mm-hmm. Quite interesting, because very often people normally, if you folks, you meet officers in the street, and then you start asking yourself the question: did all officers go through the same training? How is it that some seems to uphold the law at this level, and others seem to adopt this seemingly nonchalant attitude towards it?
Yes, and we can do a lot to train persons, and we can, do our best in offering our services to them. They perform during training school. They, at a particular level, some excel more than some, and it's sometimes amazing, as you rightly said, when you see them at times on the streets or performing elsewhere. You might have questions, but it all has to do with motivating your own self, even after you would have left training school. Motivating yourself, and some persons may not be too happy where they are working, and so they probably lose some form of motivation, and so. But it's just part of the process, and some of them do bounce back and become very good police officers.
25 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. My guest, Sergeant Campbell from the RGPF, and this morning we're discussing the recruitment process. We'll take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we open the telephone lines and we take your comments, queries, and concerns right here and to the point for today, the 20th day of the month of April. We'll be right back.
Join GBN on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. for Interesting Grenadians, a program that showcases the lives of interesting and outstanding Grenadians at home and abroad. It's Interesting Grenadians every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on GBN. Don't you miss it.
27 minutes gone past the hour. Welcome to the program, to the point for today, the 20th day of April. My guest this morning, Sergeant Campbell from the RGPF. And we're talking, Sergeant, about the recruitment process to become a member of the Royal Grenadian Police Force. We went through the initial phase, administration, their role, the publication, application process, entry, qualification, in terms of the physical, the exam process, the entrance examination, the interview, at which point is intended to get an assessment as to who you are, the kind of person that you are, and make an assessment. You do the background checks, and then you enter training school. What you did say that training school is a very deep, a specific protocol. But before I want to talk about what are some of the highlights of training school that makes it so unique. But before we do that, we want to go to the telephone line. Good morning, caller. You were live.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning to you, Mr. Cadore, and to the police officer. I didn't get his name.
Sergeant Campbell.
Oh, Mr. Campbell. First, let me just commend the Royal Grenadian Police Force on the progress it has made over the last several years. I mean, I'm not as young as you guys, but I know when the police officers were considered differently. They were fed, but they were not as professional as we have today. We have a number of bright people who are choosing to get into the police force. As opposed to before, where guys who couldn't find places elsewhere went there as employment of last resort. I have a question. It's probably above your pay grade, and it comes a little bit before the process of recruiting, and it has to do with the decision for recruiting new officers. And what guides that? Are you recruiting officers to fill vacancies that have occurred in specific areas, or are you just adding to the force? I mean, for instance, our population is about 110,000. St. Lucia is almost 200,000. Our police forces are relatively the same size. They have about 10 times the number of violent crimes that we have. Homicides, as an example. They're in the 70s and 80s per year. But we have a similar size police force. What guides you? What makes you feel that even with, and don't forget, we have traffic wardens, hundreds of them, which I don't know that St. Lucia has. Why do we feel, or what guides us in the quest or in the search for additional officers at this time?
Okay, thank you, sir.
That's my question.
Thank you. And in all fairness to you, we did actually address that at the start of the program. But yes. Go ahead, please. Just share.
Yes. So I did explain earlier that the Assistant Commissioner of Police, after having consultation with the Commissioner, will determine the amount of persons that is required within the organization. The vacancies come about because we have persons retiring. We have persons resigning. There will be persons, in some cases, dismissed, and some persons will be transferred. And because of that, the gap for or the vacuum is available now, and there is a number that the Commissioner will look at and give the permission for us to do a recruitment process. We do not recruit persons to fill in a specific vacancy. Mm-hmm. They actually come within the organization, under the umbrella of the organization, and as they grow, they get themselves into the particular areas that they work best at.
Right. And so it's as any other organization.
Yes.
You may come in at an entry level, but as you did intimate, it's based on your dedication, your commitment to task, and your ability to perform that may determine where you end up eventually.
Very well.
Okay. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. You're live.
Good morning to the sergeant that I have there. It's very interesting that in this day and age to still hear that height is a requirement for joining the police force. I think in the days of during the Gary and what I know of, people went into the force without education. They just you have big persons, and that was mainly how people went into the force. Today, I think it's very sad that we keep this, because you saying that because somebody not of a particular height at the chest, you cannot be a police officer. I think this is wrong, and I think this should be looked at. I know that they can do it because that is our administration and government, but even if the law is so, we have to move away from that colonial practice and give people a fair opportunity, and those who could make a meaningful contribution in the police service, and not just because they have a particular height that they cannot.
But we did, in all front of him, we did say, caller, we did address that issue quite clearly, sir. You may have joined the program late, but thanks for the contribution. Let's just clear the air, because we went through that in detail, that which is written on the books, but certainly we talk about the evolving culture of the RGPF and how there's that hard and fast application to that requirement.
Correct. The administration, yes, we do have a regulation to uphold as it relates to the entry of recruits into the organization. But the Commissioner of Police can determine and make changes, and that is why today people question the height of some of the officers that they see.
True.
You see, because we do not stick hard and fast with what the regulation says, but the Commissioner has that mandate to make that determination.
And you said we did intimate that again is part of the new trust to have policing more community-oriented.
Right, of course.
The number on the inside 435-2041. You can feel free to make your comments. Somebody saying the best recruits was trained as a class back in 1969, and they were talking about this contributor saying they remember the day when their brother he got the call to be part of the RGPF. Again, we're saying there's always those mix of emotions.
It is
mix of emotions. We go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I accept what the police said, but one of the things that I believe that some of the people who get into the force, and even those some of them who are there, they are lacking manners, respect, and consideration. Because some of them, I don't think they are qualified intelligently or academically to deliver what the police force call for. I hope you all will look into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sergeant?
Yes, I mean, everyone is entitled to, observe and see what is happening within the RGPF and any other place. And as in everything, nothing is really perfect, but everyone that came into the RGPF are given an opportunity to actually develop themselves. Most persons who are even at the administrative hem did not came in with all of the qualifications that they have, but they did do the areas of studies within the RGPF, and now they are at the hem because of the progress that they would have made. So once you show that determination as a police officer, as you get in the system, you can make progress by applying to go do further studies, and you do get those.
And progress is not just limited to academic pursuits, but the conversation as it relates to emotional intelligence and how you interact, because we have to agree that the way the society that existed 20, 30, 40 years ago, we become much more complex. And sometimes, though, that's where the challenge comes in individuals being able to adapt in terms of conflict resolution. How do I address and deal with? But training is done in those areas.
Right. And so when we think about the critical thinking of the man, and we look at the emotional intelligence of persons and the psychological effect that it could have, we would have added those aspects into our syllabus so that police officers can have a better understanding how to deal and approach things, from that standpoint, and not from just the law enforcement way that it was done in the earlys, as someone spoke about the days of Gary. So it's a different training that we do have now.
25 minutes on to the hour. You're a live caller.
Good morning, JP. How are you?
Good morning. I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Right. You answer a little bit of my question I wanted to ask. Because in the police force, putting a comparison, the police force, and like you're applying to be a teacher. You want to be a teacher and you want to be a police, right? To my knowledge, as a teacher, you go to a lot of workshop. They just take you and place you in the classroom and don't upgrade you. The Ministry of Education, I don't know if they're still doing it now, but they provide a lot of opportunities for you to go to workshop to upgrade yourself as a teacher in terms of handling parents, students, the public, to work with the public. In the police force, I don't know if when they train you for the 6 months and then they place you maybe in a police station or what area you apply to, after that training, you start to work. Is there any, upgrade after that? Like every month or every 3 months, you go to a workshop, to upgrade yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that is happening in the police force, because I encounter many policemen, young policemen, right? And they don't have the, they're doing the work, but sometimes they don't know how to handle conflict.
Right.
They don't know how to handle conflicts. Okay. So, I suggesting, I don't know if it is happening, that, every 6 months you upgrade these young people that is coming in. Because remember, they just leave school. A man might just leave GBSS, graduate from GBSS. He wants a job. He goes straight into the police force. Whereas they want a job in the teaching profession, they will train you. Right? I don't know if that is happening in the police force. Can you help me with that?
Thank you. Thank you, caller. Sergeant?
Yes. So, yes, we do have continuous training. After completion of the recruit courses, we have persons going out to work for a probationary period of 2 years. After the 2 years, they will return to the training school, where they will have some about 3 to a month training again, and then will finally be appointed and sent out to work at the different stations. However, we do have something called development and refreshers, and we have from time to time persons returning to the school to have development training in specific areas and sometimes in general policing. So yes, we do have regional courses, we do have international courses, and so persons themselves develop themselves also.
I think, do you get the sense though, Sergeant, given the RGPF, given the nature of the service that you offer, you're more exposed to the general, you serve the public. Right. So in fact, unlike many other professions where you might be confined to a certain group, you're a traffic officer, people see you on the street, they see you every day.
Yes.
Then you get the assessment there's always a great assessment and critiquing of their role and function, because the caller made reference to the teaching profession, and then you could always argue, some teachers, they go through teachers college, they graduate, and when they get into the classroom, it's a different conversation. And I guess that's where that's where the RGPF, I'm assuming that's where the focus is thereafter. What happens in terms of the development of an officer after he's graduated and he's on the job?
All right, so you rightly said that we are at the front line, and every day we are in contact with people. So yes, those within the station itself, they have their own development. They have lectures and parades and so, and those are things that they have to address from the station level, because on an everyday basis, as officers go to traffic, they engage people. As they patrol in town, they engage people. As they attend to a report, everything has to do with engaging of people. So it's a challenge, yes, and I believe what the caller is saying is that training is continuous, and we do try to apply it, and I trust that as we go forward, let us hope that we can see some difference, because yes, officers get the training, but sometimes when they get out there, just so many challenges around can create, some issues or so.
Yeah, good morning, caller, you're live.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning, caller, you're live.
I just want to say, when we have such discussions, I think they should send a senior officer, not a junior officer who cannot explain or doesn't know all the issues. So please ask them to send a senior officer, inspector or above.
When you say caller cannot address what specific issues, so then we deal specifically with the recruitment process.
Right. And so there are certain regulations to be followed. There are certain basic guidelines and stipulations. So please ask them to send a senior officer to such a program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, very, very much, caller. 19 minutes on to the hour in the morning time. So we got Sergeant. we got Sergeant Campbell. We wanted to talk about what are some of the highlights of what happens within the training school itself, and as part of that 6 months process.
Okay. So, physical training is one of the highlights of training, where persons go out and they do runs every morning. That highlight is a competition between the officers to do a 2-mile run within a particular time, and you can hear the conversation between them, the males and female, as to who can be the better of each other. And we also have a weekly process of examination or tests, progress tests, and then at the 4th week we have an examination every 4 weeks.
Right. And
those areas are areas that persons want to top, because it carries a weight with it when you have the highs in the exam. We give you something on your shoulder during class. So you want to have that kind of privilege to carry that badge, because I received the highs.
Prestige.
Yes, so those areas are areas that you hear that the constables speak a lot of. Another area that they are concerned about, best turnout. How much can you prepare your uniform? So during the inspection, you can be the most outstanding student. Your shoe, your uniform, your hat, your everything prepared really neat and nice. Your bed, the way it is make up, the surroundings, how clean you keep it. Everything has to be in a particular standard. And so persons look at that and they feel, as you say, a prestigious feeling to be at the top of every other student. And you can hear the discussion with them at times. Next time I'll catch you. I know what mistake I made. I'm going to catch you next time around. So it's really a nice opportunity, and those are areas that students really look forward to have that kind of privilege.
I'm assuming training schoolers get towards this developing different facets of the individual. There's a physical part, there's the emotional part, just a general sense of discipline, order, and all and such.
You see, when you get into training, you have never been in an environment like this before. The discipline is so high that your haircut has to be in a particular way, your shaving, your chin has to be in a particular way, and those are things that you don't really pay attention to before coming. The ironing of your clothing has to be in a particular way. You never paid attention to ironing your clothes in such detailed way. So those things are transforming the person, and that is what we try to do as persons get into the training environment.
Help me to appreciate it. You talk about, and I've heard some crazy story because I've been around officers, a lot of officers I know. What makes the RGPF? Because it's a military life you getting into, a military profession. There's no argument over that. But we talk about the uniforms. Give me some specifics, and just to educate the public.
All right. So you see an officer in uniform, and what happens? The uniform has to iron in a particular way that the seams should always be one and not double. Yeah, even the collar, it should be up and just straight and nice, upright.
Right.
You know, the buttons on your clothes, there is crowns on the button, it has to be upright. You know, so it's not anyhow you just take the button and put on your clothing. Everything has to be in a particular order to look in a uniform way. So if an inspection is being conducted, persons will see you and recognize you as, you know, well put together, and you will be graded higher than the other officers.
Quite interested. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Cadore. Greetings.
Good morning to you,
Listen,
sir.
I beg your humble indulgences if the question I shall ask here has been dealt with prior. It is rather enthusing and, should I say, even amusing to hear the emphasis that is placed on the quote-unquote spick and span nature of the presentation of the police officer. I do hope, however, that this same level of training, qualification, and ability be done in the manner, in the aspect of, language skills, that the police officer learn the English language properly so they can communicate with much more efficiency and clarity to the Grenadian people. Just an observation for what it's worth. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, caller. I think, Sergeant, we did, and we hinted to that, the importance of officers being able to appreciate the English language as it is, and your ability to communicate, given the fact that the role that you play in terms with the judiciary.
Of course.
Part of the judiciary.
Yes, and it's not only that, as we mentioned earlier, you are in contact with people on an everyday basis. You have to go to several reports, attend several domestic issues, and you must be able to have and hold that conversation with persons so that they can understand, you know, the communication level. And yes, I understand my last caller. That's a very important point.
Sometimes I'm assuming it has to be something you might be feeling need to feel a bit of sympathy for police officers, in that the nature is a high pressured environment in which you work, and there's no situation. You know, for example, my job, while it has its stress areas, you could manage it differently. But for an officer, he's going out he gets a report, and he gets there, and you have no idea what is it that you're going to meet. And so it requires one, not just the on-the-job training from the RGPF, but the officer himself literally have to do his own sense of develop himself in terms of self-control. How do I deal with situations outside of the official training that the organization offers?
Yes, there are times you attend some reports, and it's in some cases it's not anything to do with the police only, but it has some other agency that should be dealing with that. And so you have to put on that cap of that other agency at times to assist also. And so it becomes a challenging thing for officers at times when they go out to deal with reports. Yes, that's so true.
And especially given the context, and how does the RGPF handle these that door? Because our society has become much more complex. People are much more demanding. People have become less patient, much more intolerant, and they want everything now. For members of the RGPF, I mean, in terms of being able to, on a daily basis, to deal with those things, and there's specific training. I know you talk about workshops and different things as part of the traditional military life, but is there specific training that you go through so be able to deal with those different dynamics out there?
In training school, we try to have a lot of scenario events for officers. And the scenario events do not only entails what the police has to do in terms of the regulation, but it may encompass something outside of that realm. And so we cannot cover everything. So it's a challenge to come up with ideas. Sometimes we may think of something that happened in the past and see how much they can adapt to it. And if they can't appreciate it at the time, then we go through it with them and try to explain, or we bring in persons on the outside from that agency so that they can have a little session with them, 1 or 2 sessions, so they can understand.
8 minutes on to the hour, we go back to the telephone line. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, Jim.
Good morning to you.
Let's go ask the constable if in the program...
He's actually a sergeant, Sergeant Campbell.
Pardon me?
He's a sergeant, Sergeant Campbell.
Sergeant, yes. Sorry, I apologize for that. I want to ask them if within the program of training, do they have any part of the program that deal with the spiritual aspect of the individual? Because as I always say, a human being is first of all a spirit being, secondly a physical being. What all society do is to deal with the physical and ignore the spiritual. So that is non-existent. So I want to know if they do have an aspect of spirituality where the people get to know themselves as a spirit being and their relationship to the Creator. And if they do not, I suggest very strongly that they start bringing in or add spirituality to the training.
Okay, thank you.
Constable Richard is a Christian, is a pastor, and so he would also, if they don't have, that he would agree that this is essential and is necessary for every human being to recognize the spiritual side.
So let me get him to answer, caller. Let me get him to. The caller seems to be getting the rankings wrong this evening. I wonder if it's... No, anyway, go ahead, Sergeant.
So what we have within the training school, I have seen it from our last few courses that the students are allowed to attend a church nearby if they really want to, right? That is something that is worked out with the commandant of the school, in charge of the school, and students, we allow them to get a bus and we ensure that they go. Some of us go with them to a church nearby where they can celebrate. The very last course, however, what I recognize they did, they held their own service on Sundays, on mornings at the school.
Right.
So yes, we allow students to have the spiritual side be filled because we understand that yes, there is a spiritual being and we must praise God and give him thanks when that time comes around.
But fair enough. But I think ultimately those issues of spirituality comes down to an individual.
Yes.
Because I don't assume as an organization that you can enforce any particular religious persuasion on any one person. I think each person reserves their right, but I could well accept that certainly during the rank and file, they're different, as in any organizations. I know the organizations where first thing in the morning they have to pray. They set a number, nothing to do with anything. But so I think that would probably be but even within the organizations, there are persons who may be of similar faith who would certainly may choose to make the decision, let us come together and have those. Right, fair enough. 8 minutes on 7 minutes on to the hour in the morning time. My guest this morning, Sergeant Campbell, and we're talking about the RGPS recruitment process. We go back to the telephone line. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning, caller.
What I want you to say to me now, or to answer my question clearly, I want to know if there is any law for the police and them drinking rum in uniform or drinking beer in uniform. If they're on the road, they pass, they have a beer. I want to know what is the real purpose of that, because I don't really understand if they disrespect in the uniform, or if he don't have law for that.
Okay.
Explain to me, please.
Thank you, caller. Sergeant?
Yes. Thank you, caller. Our regulations speaks about drinking in uniform, and yes, it's not appropriate for a police officer to be seen in uniform drinking beers. So caller, that is something that we do have in our regulations, and it is not accepted by the administration.
I think it would be fair to say the RGPF, like many other organizations, outside of the protocols of protecting service to the community, you do have your internal regulations that guide how people, your employees, officers, should behave, whether on the job or off the job. That is not separated apart from the RGPF.
No, it's not.
It's not separate. 5 minutes on to the hour. We're getting ready. We're getting ready to wrap the conversation this morning. Sergeant Campbell, we got to training school. We talked about that 6 months. After the 6 months, what happens as we get ready to wrap the conversation?
Okay, so after the 6 months of training, officers will be sent out to the different divisions to work for a period of 2 years, and those 2 years are what we call the probation period. So once officers behave in a particular manner that is accepted by the RGPF, they can be appointed as a police officer after the 2 years. However, they must return to the police training school, where all of the assessments within that 2 years must be assessed again, and another assessment for about 3 to 4 weeks is done while they are at the training school to ensure their appointment at the police.
So you do not receive the official title of police officer not until
probation period is over.
Probation ends. So we're looking at least an average almost close to 3 years.
3 years, and it can go longer, because if someone did not meet the requirements, they can be given another opportunity to go back out for a probationary period of a year or so.
In terms of remuneration, are they paid during that process?
Yes.
Even while at training school?
Yes, they are paid, and that's one of the advantages of coming into the training. You paid to be trained for 6 months.
And are there any special requirements for being in training school? Is it a case where I report every day, or is it I'm away from my family and I'm confined to with my unit, my whoever else is training? How does that work?
Yes, so yes, you are confined to the institution of training for the 6 months. However, there will be a period of time that you will be given an opportunity to have a weekend, but that weekend comes with certain privileges. You have to win that privilege by good performance and behavior and discipline and so.
So even from the start of training school, the idea is to attempt to mold you into the ideal officer.
Yes. Preparing you for remaining in barracks for a lengthy period of time. You never can tell what's happening with the country or what kind of emergencies that we have to deal with. So we are framing you to, have that kind of acceptance to stay away from your lovely home at times and family.
Well, some of us are wondering if we can actually be police officers. I'm not really quite sure. Recruitment is actually ongoing right now.
The publication is on, and we are presently looking at applications. The administration will make another call as to when the date will be for training.
A question that just popped up via social media as to whether or not, if a police officer is not appointed, you said they go through training school, there's a probationary period for the 2 years. Can they arrest? Can they charge individuals?
Right. Yes, they can. I will give you an experience. I remember during training a couple of years ago, officers went out, to do some work at the St. George's area, and one of our recruit officers made an arrest. What happens during the training session at the initial coming in at training school? The commissioner of police will come and give you an instrument of appointment. Right, so that gives you authority to make that arrest and so.
And I'm assuming, as with any other organization, during that probationary period, whenever you go out, there would be a senior officer there with you.
Yes, and that's the ideal thing. We do have senior officers accompanying these junior recruits or probationers, and they walk along with them. Some of them are their mentors to see how they perform and to assess them. So it keeps them really focused to do what they really have to do.
It sounds like an on-the-job training, as in any other organization. You work, you come in, and you always happen you go in as an understudy until you understand the ropes, and then you go out and you own.
Yes.
Thank you. 2 minutes on to the hour in the morning time. Thanks for being part of my guest this morning was Sergeant Campbell of the Royal Grenada Police Force. And this morning we were talking about the recruitment process that is needed to join the RGPF. You join, you go through, there's the administration deciding how many individuals do we need. There's that process. You get it into training school, and there is a standard minimum 2-year probationary period that you go through to be a member of this elite group of members of the RGPF, whose job it is to protect, serve, and be part of the community conversation to keep us safe as a nation. Thank you, Sergeant Campbell. All the best to you.
Thank you, sir.
To all our listeners and viewers, this is as far as that we can take the conversation. Indeed, it was a pleasure being here with you for a Thursday. We say thanks to those of you that's on radio, those of you that's on television and on social media. All the best. God bless. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.